I'm Matt.
I'm Shane.
And if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that thumbs up button real hard, and make sure you subscribe to Comic Movie Marks.
And also click that little bell for all of the notifications.
Whee!
Always remember,
if Trailer Trash can do it,
anyone can do it.
Hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video.
We have a very intriguing Forbes article written by Scott Mendelson, and he says Aquaman box office nearly double Man of Steel despite similar reviews.
We've been holding on to this article for a little bit. Pretty accurate for the most part, that despite the similar reviews, the similar tomato meter scores and audience reactions to Man of Steel and Aquaman, right now Aquaman has hit over $1 billion worldwide. It kind of made us start thinking, like, well, why? This kind of ties in a little bit to our last video of, like, taking risk in comic book movies. And when you kind of go over what this gentleman talks about in this article, kind of makes you think, why would WB risk things? Why would they stretch their bottom dollar to get the same results with risk or without risk, but actually make more money?
Obviously, Disney is doing a great job at playing it safe and earning that mighty dollar. So now that Warner Brothers / DC has been able to dabble a little bit in that and see the box office success, it makes you wonder, are they going to play it a little bit safer now and maybe not push the envelope a little bit more? That seems to be the narrative for me for 2019, is the lack of pushing the envelope.
We just started. There's 23 days into it. Jeez, give it a chance.
I feel like every video I've talked about, like, yep, no one's going to push the envelope, push the envelope, push the envelope. Hashtag push the envelope.
Well, that's what our shirt will say. And you can get that shirt for $10, but $80 shipping.
Yeah.
Thank you to one of our commenters.
Yes, that was fantastic.
So this article says, despite the narrative that Aquaman had noticeably superior reviews compared to an average DC film flick, the actual stats were nearly identical to Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. The Jason Momoa flick earned 22 positive reviews, 21 mixed reviews, and 6 outright negative reviews, with a 7.3 out of 10 average audience score. In terms of reviews, the Henry Cavill flick earned 20 positive reviews, 24 mixed reviews, and 3 negative reviews, along with an average user score of 7.5 out of 10. Aquaman has a 64% fresh at Rotten Tomatoes compared to Man of Steel's 56% rotten. With almost identical numbers of reviews, 316 versus 318, Man of Steel averaged 6.3 out of 10 from critics and a 75% user score, while Aquaman averaged just 6 out of 10 with a 79% user score.
I think it's very important just to note real quick that this is all coming from Rotten Tomatoes. Obviously, this whole article is based on essentially the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, but that's obviously the biggest sticking point now to a lot of people. Even though Matt and I talk about it all the time how irrelevant it is still very intriguing how closely these two films line up.
Well, when you kind of compare it to the atmosphere of what the movies were in, I mean, yeah, they land almost identical, but for some reason, box office seems to be different. The article continues, what this means specifically for Rotten Tomatoes is that more critics panned Man of Steel, but those who liked Man of Steel were likely to rave about it. It split people. It was more controversial. It really split the individual. There was less people like, but more people like, I love it or I fucking hated it. Makes sense to me. That makes some sense since the Henry Cavill epic has a certain mythic pretentiousness. James Wan's adventure is a little subtler about its big ideas. One sells itself as a defining piece of American myth-making, while the other bills itself as a well-produced Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of what we're talking about. Aquaman has played it a little bit safe, a little bit more family-friendly, a little bit more for the kids, when there was bigger ideas used for the Man of Steel.
So then the article continues. I think there are two factors at play. First, Aquaman plays as a start-to-finish fantasy blowout spectacular. As zany as Man of Steel's first Krypton set reel is, it mostly dials it down after Krypton explodes for the sake of a more grounded and real-world what-if Superman origin story. Second, Aquaman gets its hero's moral dilemma out of the way in its opening sequences. Aquaman's "I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you" decision is eventually called out and plays into the comparatively guilt-free final battle. Conversely, Man of Steel's action finale, while amazing in construction, requires you to be okay with Superman indirectly allowing hundreds of thousands to perish and murdering Zod in a "what choice do I have" tragedy. Aquaman ends with worry-free fun, while Man of Steel requires you to ignore the collateral damage in order to enjoy it. I feel like some people, when they're listening to our videos, they misinterpret what we say. Those are words from Scott Mendelson, the writer of this article, in terms of, how he's painting Man of Steel and how he says, oh, you have to ignore all the fun or all the collateral damage in order to enjoy it.
And that kind of reminded me of this Zack Snyder quote where he says, "It's funny to see people really taking it personally because I made Superman real, I made him feel or made consequences in the world. I felt like it was the same thing in Watchmen. We really wanted to show it wasn't just like they thought, like a PG-13 version where everyone just gets up and they're fine. I really wanted to show the violence. People get killed or get hurt, and it's not fun or funny."
And the truth shall set you free!
This guy kind of nails it. That's exactly what Snyder is trying to do. He's adding stakes. That's what a good movie does. It adds stakes to the world. You have to feel for this world now. They just went through a shitstorm of chaos. And Aquaman, it just kind of all condensed to the sea. Yeah, it's one epic hell of a battle, but it's with a bunch of people you don't even really know and sharks with lasers on their heads.
I think Scott brings up another interesting point, basically talking about how the films are compiled. The Aquaman and Man of Steel are about equal in terms of relative A, B to C origin story, but Aquaman sent folks out of the theater on a high, while Man of Steel left folks weirdly depressed. And I think that is very telling when you compare films like Man of Steel, Batman v Superman. I don't necessarily agree that when you left depressed. If you look at, again, for the sake of argument with a Marvel versus a DC type movie, DC is going to make you think. It's going to make you feel. It's going to make you curious of, okay, the future of things, or, what's the narrative, what's the plot, what is the angle of the director, all these things. And with Marvel, it's more of, oh, I enjoyed that. I had a great time. You walk out of there with a smile, and maybe in turn, you're a little bit more willing to say, yeah, that was a fantastic movie, versus one where you're like, oh, okay, that was good. Maybe makes you think a little bit more. So I think that's a very actually solid point of how people leave. He also talks about that we've learned with Venom and Avengers, you can get away with a lot if you have a superior third act, meaning the majority of the movie doesn't really have to matter as long as you have a superior third act. You leave people on a high, and they leave the theater going, wow, that was fantastic.
Exactly. That is the point. Ending them on a smile. And I just really think this becomes a battle of fans and what people want to see in a movie. There is some that will take a movie very serious, and they will constantly rewatch that movie over and over again, dissect every aspect of it. And then there are some people that just look at movies purely as a form of momentary entertainment. They can go in, they watch the movie, they smile, they enjoy themselves, it got to the point, and they walk out. There's no reminders of real-world aspects to it that could maybe simulate some atrocities that happen in our world. There's nothing really much to it. It just brings a smile to your face and you walk out. And I think there's a battle between these two types of moviegoers really going on. And that's what we see a lot. And I see it in our comments. I see some people that just talk about, these are the good movies because they were successful. They brought a smile to my face. That's why.
They were fun.
Exactly. And that's kind of why fun is a little bit getting torn down a little bit, because fun is used for a movie that you didn't really think about too much. Didn't maybe have the greatest consequences in it as well. When you have movies like Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and even Wonder Woman to an extent, that have higher stakes, that have more relevancy in their world, sometimes those don't get appreciated as much because, oh, you're bringing the real world into a comic book movie. This is supposed to be superheroes. It's supposed to be fun. I can see both sides. I really, truly can. I get both sides, but I just fall on that other side that, you know, the ones that like to dissect these movies and see these characters deal with real world issues. I don't care what character they really are, whether it's a Batman, a Superman, a Wonder Woman, Flash. I don't care. If it's a compelling story that involves the character and makes sense to the character for the most part, I'm going to really thoroughly enjoy it. And it's going to mean more to me in the end, other than the movies that, you know, cool. Look at that. They did a cool circling shot of all the Avengers. Look at that. They're beating the shit out of some random aliens. Yeah. All right, cool. Good times. And there's these two types of moviegoers. And they just need to understand each other a little bit more, I feel like. Because one thinks they're right and the other one thinks they're right, and it just causes issues when really you just need to understand what the hell the other person's saying.
Absolutely. And also understand what type of movie you're going to be seeing. You can go into a movie and go, okay, I think this is going to be a fun throwaway, like, all right, yeah, that was fun, you know, kind of give me the next one type of thing. I fall in line with Matt as well. And one of the things that I really enjoy, Glass is kind of the most recent example of this. Matt and I had a small difference in opinion regarding, you know, what we thought about the movie and how the movie ended up turning out. And you look at our comments and just some of the ways that people interpret this film are just fascinating. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy, you know, going back and forth with someone, communicating, talking about a movie and how someone interpreted it and why people enjoyed something over another thing when it's intelligent and not belittling and just more of just a discussion of what they enjoyed. And I think that just speaks so highly of films like that. And no, maybe they don't just blow you away box office wise, but to have discussions about what the director was intending with a specific scene or with a specific character, I find so fascinating, as opposed to, I liked this, I didn't like this, too much humor, not enough humor, you know, too much action, not enough action, all blow up, you know, like there's such some
it's boring, nothing happened. Right.
There's such simplicity in certain films, but when you actually can interpret, look at some of the stuff with Batman v Superman. It's awesome how people are able to, they interpret the same movie so differently and how they take it. It's just as fascinating. And the BVS reference page on Vero, it's so cool. You may not agree with any of what someone is saying, but the fact that you can watch the same movie and interpret it differently, awesome. And though that's stuff that I personally really enjoy about a film.
The moral dilemmas. That's the one aspect of Man of Steel that I personally love, and I think what makes it superior to a lot of these movies is the moral dilemma. And that even carries over into Batman vs. Superman as well, but the moral dilemma of being a Superman. What do you do? And people could say all this stuff right away, how easy it would be to do this, this, and this, because they're not there. But to really think about it, like, what would you do? Seriously, motherfuckers, sit down, think about it for a second. With all the aspects of this real world, what would you really do in these scenarios? I want to add a third possibility to the reason why also Aquaman box office exceeds so much more than what Man of Steel had. And this is from a Vulture article saying foreign moviegoers matter more than ever. A staggering 70% of Aquaman's revenues came from countries outside the US, including Taiwan, Russia, UK, Mexico, and Brazil. In China alone, the film grossed $285 million. For a few years now, the received wisdom here is that even a middling domestic performance can be dramatically offset if viewers are loving the movie overseas, and positioning an event movie like Aquaman for a global audience has huge upsides. You see that with the Transformers movies, the Michael Bay ones anyway. They do okay here domestically in the States, but overseas, they do gangbusters. The critics can't affect what happens overseas. No one gives a shit about Rotten Tomatoes in a lot of these countries like Taiwan, Russia, Mexico, Brazil. Yeah, I know. We talk about it too much. The marketing team for Warner Brothers also did something very, very unique. By releasing it in China first, again, where Rotten Tomatoes doesn't matter, But they were able to use fan buzz to start off the momentum for Aquaman. And by the time it finally did get to these reviews, there was already a lot of talk about the movie being good from these other places, from these other countries. So it kind of wiped away some of that critic negativity before it ever even happened. It was definitely a unique strategy to try to minimize any negativity by critics.
I definitely think that's a strategy that Disney employs, is release it overseas, have it well received, and then release it domestically after that. From what I recall, the majority of their films are released overseas first, whereas Warner Brothers has always been the opposite. It's always been released domestically first up until Aquaman. So it's very interesting to kind of get this positive buzz about a film overseas before, and then people are itching to have it, specifically domestically. So it's a very intriguing strategy.
The Forbes article concludes with, add this to the list of why Aquaman topped 1 billion worldwide explanations. As I wanted to dive into the critical narrative versus the objective reality, Aquaman and Man of Steel are about equal via almost every commonly discussed critical variable. Man of Steel and Aquaman both got an A- from CinemaScore, and yet one is considered a critical failure, while the other is considered comparatively roaring success. Of course, there's no comparison financially, as Aquaman has done what Justice League, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman could not in crossing 1 billion worldwide. But if you want another reason why I always insist on checking the average critic score when glancing at Rotten Tomatoes, this is why. Aquaman and Man of Steel are on equal footing by every measure save for the much-quoted tomato meter. Which, I don't know if a lot of people even realize that they're pretty much equal. But yet one is doing so much better in the box office.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried to talk shit about CGI hair, but that kind of came and gone. And I really think if Warner Brothers is looking at this, well, hell, fucking Aquaman has critically and audience reaction wise has the same as Man of Steel, but yet it's made more money and we got no controversy afterwards. Well, guess what? We're going to start doing movies like that now.
Oh, dear God, no!
It's going to be simpler movies. Go fetch the trident. Go explore your new powers as a kid. End of story. Thank you. Ibbity ibbity. That's all, folks. In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. You're one of very few to make it to the end.
Yes, thank you very much.
Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Comic Movie Marks Podcast and hit the notification bell. All these fucking YouTube channels say this shit, so I'm going to say it now.
Yes, it's perfect. And if you want to hear our full podcast, you can check out our podcast on iTunes or any other podcast subscription service.
Make sure you subscribe. Thanks again.